But now, breaking today, there's newly released government data which show just how much these highly skilled immigrant workers stand to make at some of the biggest tech firms in Silicon Valley. Take a look at these numbers. So we pulled some of the salaries here. Apple pays an average of $139,000. Google, $132,000. Amazon, $115,000. But they're not the only ones. Banks like JP Goldman Sachs, they pay a lot too. IBM, in six figures. Six figures. So why the controversy over making sure immigrants come with skills that can nab them good-paying jobs? Fox News political analyst Jehmu Greene is a child of undocumented immigrants from Liberia. And we're also joined by conservative commentator Rory Riley. Welcome to you both. Jehmu, the Silicon Valley data prove that when immigrant workers come in with big skills, they get really solid starting salaries, not to mention that they then are put in a position where they don't go on welfare. We don't then see welfare balloon to levels that we can't handle. So what is the issue that you personally have?
Look, I have no issue with increasing the number of highly skilled immigrants that come into this country. But I think the issue with this new legislation that the administration is supporting is going to cut legal immigration by half. And you've got states that their entire agriculture, tourism, service industries would be decimated by this. I think we have to start this conversation by, one, all acknowledging that, look, immigrants are not the enemy. Each one of us has an immigration story, and I think if you talk to your parents, your grandparents, and really dive into your immigration story, it's going to become clear that it wasn't from highly skilled relatives coming into this country. You have to think about the motivation it takes to leave your country, to leave maybe a country that you speak a whole other language. That's why first-generation Americans start businesses at much higher levels than non-immigrants.
Well, let me jump in and ask Rory, and she's right. Everybody has an immigrant story, and my great-grandmother came here to New York, and guess what? She dragged my grandmother because my grandmother had red hair, and in Romania, they're little nuts. They think redheads are the devil. Oh, I resemble that remark. But to be very serious, if the argument is that low-wage earners are getting their jobs taken away from them by immigrants, Rory, you know, why is it any better if only smarter, skilled workers come in and take the good-paying jobs?
Well, I think that the main thing with this immigration bill is that it reshuffles the priorities for immigration. Trump supporters were largely struggling Americans and middle-class America, and what he's saying is that these Americans need to have first priority in getting some of those skilled jobs, or unskilled jobs, excuse me.
Unskilled, but many of them, you talk to anybody in the hotel industry, and they say those jobs go unfilled except by immigrants who agree to take those lower wages.
Well, again, I think that the Trump administration is trying to reshape the priorities so that jobs like that become more attractive to Americans who need a job.
And Jehmu, he's also doing something that's really important here. He's looking at it from a bigger, wider lens and seeing that our welfare system is incredibly stressed, and immigrants who come in without skills end up on the welfare rolls way more often. In fact, we've got some stats here that we can show you. Way more often they get on there, and they're dependent upon it, and that falls on the shoulders of other legal immigrants.
I would love for him to look at this from an even wider lens. I don't think our immigration policy should be cherry-picked as we go along this process of reform. We need comprehensive immigration reform, and the majority, overwhelming majority of Americans want to see a legal path to citizenship included in there. And so cherry-picking to, you know, maybe live up to your campaign promises to a small portion of the American community is not the most productive way.
I also don't want to see welfare balloon, and it is incredibly frustrating when people come in from other countries and they immediately go on the welfare rolls. So, Rory, what would this do to prevent that, especially considering, and I'll go back to this, Silicon Valley, which has been very quiet, interestingly enough, in the wake of this announcement yesterday about reforms. they probably like it. They need more skilled workers. Doesn't this come down to fixing our education system from K through 12 to teach coding, to teach beginning engineering so that they are able to fill the Silicon Valley giant jobs that are out there versus leaving them to better educated immigrants?
Well, yes, I think that you touch on an important point about education, and that is an entirely separate issue that we could talk lots about. But as it relates directly to the immigration policy that was put forth yesterday, I don't necessarily think that it's cherry picking. I think it is taking a look at the big picture, like you stated, and in order to get a handle on some of these issues, such as the welfare rolls, like you mentioned, we have to scale it back in order to better understand it, and that's exactly what this policy does.
This battle on the screen to your left, we want to play a little bit of it. Glenn Thrush, that was Jim Acosta of CNN, but Glenn Thrush of the New York Times asked for specifics on the research that the Trump administration used to put this new plan together. Listen.
Glenn, I named the studies. I named the studies.
I asked you for a statistic. Can you tell me
Glenn,
how many...
Maybe we'll make a carve-out in the bill that says the New York Times can hire all the low-skilled, less-paid workers they want from other countries, and see how you feel then about low-wage substitution. This is a reality that's happening in our country. Maybe it's time we had compassion, Glenn, for American workers. President Trump has met with American workers who've been replaced by foreign workers and ask them how this has affected their lives. Look at, I just told you.
And it went on and on and on. But in the end, and we've got very limited time here, Jehmu, we need something done. And at least this is a beginning, and perhaps if we brought in Democrats, would they work on this?
Look, I think Democrats have been wanting to work on immigration for decades. But, Liz, what this boils down to for me is I agree with the majority of economists who understand that if you cut immigration in half, you're going to slow our growth.
Okay.
And that is not what President Trump promised to do.
All right. Well, Jehmu and Rory, this is going to be a long running conversation. We'll have you back. Thank you so much.